Hello. This video lesson, Excel, Date Math, and More, will walk you through, explain, and demonstrate how to get Excel to do math with dates and some more time savers. This video is designed to be used along with your copy of the Excel file named 201 Excel, Date Math, and More. When you've finished using the video, you should be able to complete the Excel file. As usual, your Excel file starts with the score summary sheet. And as you've experienced in the previous Excel videos, a portion of this file will need to be manually graded by your instructor when you submit your file. Eventually, we'll come back to the Account Receivable Aging tab. We'll spend most of our time here. But before we get into this, we need to talk about date math basics. So that's where we're going to start. So Excel is programmed to be able to do math with dates, which turns out to be a huge time saver. And it helps to get an idea of how Excel does math with dates. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to enter a number, a date, and I'm going to start with January 1st of 1900. So I'm going to type in the 01 slash, that's for January, 01 for January 1st, and then the year 1900. And when I press enter, Excel recognizes that format as a date and it says, okay, I know this is a date and I'll be able to do math with it. So the way it does math is that beneath what we see, what is formatted as a date, is actually a plain old number. So I'm going to type the date in again just so you can see. So there's my January 1st of 1900 again, but this time I'm going to reformat it so that you can see there's really just a number under there. So to format, I'm going to right click in this cell, go to Format Cells, go to the Number tab, and I have a choice. I can either format it as a number, but if I do that, I have to crank the decimal places down to 0. Or I could have just clicked on General, and that will just show me a plain old number with no decimal places. So the fact is that underneath what we see as a date, there's actually a plain old number sitting there. So let me keep going here. Now I'm going to enter the date January 2nd of 1900. So 01 slash 02 slash 1900, January 2nd of 1900. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put it in again and then reformat this one to just see the plain old number. And this time I'm just going straight to general. So beneath what we see as the date of January 2nd, 1900, Excel just sees a plain old number, the number 2. And of course, Excel can do math very easily with plain old numbers, and that's how Excel is able to do date math. But let's keep on going here. So I'm going to fast forward to a date that's much closer to the current date. And I'm going to type in August 31st, so 08/31/2024, close to the current date. And eventually we'll have Excel show us what number lies beneath 8/31 of 24. But we're going to estimate what the number of days is between January 1st of 1900 and August 31st of 2024. And then we'll see how close we come. So the first thing I'm going to do to estimate is I'm going to take the year 2024 and I'm going to enter the year 1900 in a different cell. And I'm going to just figure out, well, how many years are between 1900 and 2024. So I'm going to have Excel simply subtract. So take the 2024, subtract 1900, and it turns out that there are 124 years between 1900 and 2024. And then I want to find out, well, how many days are in 124 years? So let's just go with 365 days per year. Again, we're just estimating. Excel will be more precise when we get Excel to do this. And this time I'm going to have Excel multiply. I'm going to have it take the 124 years times the 365 days per year. I'm going to make that, format it for commas so it's easier to read. And it turns out that there are 45,260 days in 124 years, approximately. Okay, well, that's fine, except that our date didn't just end on January 1st of 2024. It's actually 8 months into 2024. So now I got to estimate the number of days in 8 months. So we got 8 months, and there are approximately 30 days per month. Again, we're estimating. And then I'll have Excel multiply 8 months times 30 days per month. There are approximately 240 days in those 8 months. So the total number of days then that we're estimating, if I get Excel to add these for us, will be 45,260 plus 240, about 45,500 days total between January 1st of 1900 and August 31st of 2024. That's our estimate. So now let's see how many days there actually are, what number underlies August 31st. Again, I'm going to enter the date again, and then I'll reformat it so that we can actually see the underlying number. Put a comma in there. And it turns out that there are actually 45,535 days between January 1st of 1900 and August 31st of 2024. So the difference between our estimate, 45,500, and the actual has to do with, number one, we estimated 30 days per month, and of course they're not exactly 30 days in every month. And there are leap years. In those 124 years, there were some leap years that had 366 days. So yeah, we're a little bit off, but we're close. So just to prove that, yeah, all Excel is doing as it looks at a date is it's counting up how many days have elapsed since January 1st of 1900 and whatever date you're looking at. And because underneath each date there's just a plain old number, Excel is perfectly capable of doing math with those dates. So that's how Excel does math with dates. Now let's go ahead and move back to our accounts receivable aging tab, and we'll apply this in an accounting context. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so that you can see it a little bit better. So our task here on this tab is to use Excel to prepare an accounts receivable aging. Well, first of all, what's an account receivable aging? An aging is a schedule that accountants have learned to prepare because they've discovered over the years that the older an account receivable gets, the less likely we are to be able to collect it. It's just kind of a fact of life. And so if we want to estimate our bad accounts receivable, the portion of our total accounts receivable that we won't be able to collect, we want the bad ones, we can do this based on the age of the accounts receivable. So that's what the aging is, and as we go through these steps, you'll get the details on how to actually prepare one of these. So the first instruction says, all right, in cell D21, enter a formula to calculate the number of days old that Garcia's account receivable is. So we'll go to cell D21, and that's Garcia's account receivable line. The amount we have the right to receive from Garcia is $8,700. The day on which the receivable was created was the date of sale, and that was on December 2nd of 2028. Very important here, for purposes of this file, today is actually December 31st of 2028. So that's the current date. So when we're looking at how old these receivables are, it's in relation to December 31st of 2028. So you should be able to come close to the number of days old just by looking at the two dates and doing this in your head. So 31 minus 2 is about 29 days. So this receivable that we created on December 2nd, by the end of the month, is about 29 days old. But let's get Excel to do the math for us. So I've selected D21, and I'm going to type in the equal sign to get a formula started. And then what we want is Excel to get the difference between these two dates, but think about the numbers that underlie the two dates and which number is going to be higher. And the older the date is into the past, so December 2nd is further into the past than December 31st, the older it is, the smaller the number, right? Because as you move forward in time, the numbers get bigger. And we want to make sure we put the bigger number in first so that we don't end up with a negative number of days. It's just a subtraction thing. So I'm clicking on December 31st, 2028, which has the bigger number underneath it, telling Excel I need it to subtract, and then clicking in the cell with December 2nd in it, and I'll press enter. And there's the 29 days old that is the age of Garcia's account receivable. So we just told Excel, do some date math using these two dates, figure out the number of days in between. That's how old that receivable is. So I can check off our first step there. We can move on to the second step, which says, all right, in cell D21, that same cell, use absolute and relative cell references as needed in order to autofill the formula down column D. So there's several things packed into that. So I've reselected cell D21. And first of all, let's talk about autofill. I have the cell selected, but I'm not in the edit mode. And I hover over the bottom right corner of the selected cell until I get a plain little black cross. It's just a simple little cross. And once I have that cross, I can use my left mouse button, hold it down, and drag down to all the cells that I want to copy or autofill that formula to. And when I let go, I get some pretty scary results, a lot of negatives in there and an error message, yikes. All right. So when that happens, don't panic. We'll go back to the first cell and double check that. So I'm putting myself in the edit mode so I can see the shading on the cells that are being used. And yes, we do want to take December 31st and subtract December 2nd. No problem. So that one's good. So I'll go to the next one where it's not so good. Put myself in the edit mode. And the first thing we see is that the reference to the date of sale moved from Garcia's to Gonzalez's, and that was good. We wanted it to do that. But what we didn't want to have happen was we didn't want the reference to the current date to slip down to a cell that's got text in it. That's why we're getting the error message, because Excel can't subtract something with text in it. So there's our problem. On the second line, we need the subtraction to start with December 31st, not C20, the date of sale. So I'm going to go back to my the first formula in this set and make my change there, because I need to be able to copy whatever's in that first one. I need to be able to copy it down and have it work correctly the whole way down. So let's take a look at our first formula. And what happens when you use cell references and formulas is that Excel automatically lets those cell references change relative to where you start and where you're going. And that was why it let C21, the date of sale, why it let it slip down to C22. And that was a good thing. That's what we wanted it to do. But what we did not want to let slip was C19. So we need to tell Excel to lock in C19. Don't let that one change. In other words, we need to make this cell reference absolute. So the default is that all the cell references are what they call relative, and they will change relative to where you start and where you're going. But we can tell Excel, lock this in, make it absolute. To do that, I need to put a $sign in front of the column letter and the row number. So I put my cursor right in front of the C, and I'm going to use my shift key and the $sign to put a $sign in there in front of the column. And then put my cursor in front of the row number, and I need to insert another $sign. So now I have a $sign in front of the row and the column indicators, And that tells Excel, lock this in, don't let it change. So now when I use the autofill cross, the little black cross in the bottom right-hand corner, and copy down or autofill down, now my results look a whole lot better. I don't have any error messages and I don't have any negatives in there. So I am going to go back and show you, I'm going to undo that and then we'll redo. I want to show you another way to be able to get those dollar signs in. So depending on your keyboard, this alternate way might or might not be faster. It's going to depend on what keyboard you have. But I can go ahead and select the entire cell reference that I want to make absolute, that I want to get the dollar signs into. And if I have a full keyboard that has a separate row of function keys, all I have to do is press the F4 function key and it will put those two dollar signs in for me. Well, I don't have a full keyboard. I'm working on a laptop. So in order for me to put the dollar signs in using the keyboard, I have to press my FN function key, and the F4 key. And that puts the dollar signs in for me. Or again, you can do it the way we did the first time and just type them in manually. So you have several ways to get those dollar signs in. It just depends on your keyboard, which is going to be the fastest for you. Doesn't matter how you get them in there, as long as those dollar signs are in there. When you autofill down, Excel just locked in the reference to December 31st, but it let the reference to the date of sale shift as it went down. And just to double check a couple, this will be fast. Okay, so the date of sale is the 29th. 2 days later is the 31st. So yes, that receivable there is 2 days old. Let's pick another quick one to do. On the 23rd, we made a sale, got an account receivable, and the difference between the 23rd and the 31st is 8 days. So it looks like the formulas are working the way they should. So we can check off the second instruction. The third instruction asks us to spread the accounts receivable amounts. That's an accounting thing. We talk about spreading the amounts into the applicable age column. So in other words, we're going to look at how old the receivable is and then get the amount of the receivable into an appropriate age column. And again, keep in mind that the whole point is that the older these receivables are, that was real old, the less likely it is we're going to collect it. The more of that amount is probably bad. So let's do this first one. Let's spread this first one. We look at Garcia's. It's 29 days old. And we have these 4 different age categories. Well, 29 is going to put him into the less than 30 days old. That's a pretty new account receivable. So I'm going to select the cell in the less than 30-day category, and I'm going to echo in the amount of the account receivable. So we're using the number of days to figure out which column we'll be in, but when we pull the amount in, it's the amount of the account receivable itself. Let's do the next one. Gonzalez's receivable is 54 days old. So that puts it in the 30 to 60 day category. But when I echo in, I'm going to grab the actual amount of the account receivable. And Hernandez account receivable is 78 days old. That puts it into the 60 to 90 day category. So I'll select that column and grab his account receivable amount to echo in the 5,100. Let's take some that hit right on those critical points, right on 30, 60, 90, so you can see what to do with those. So Smirnoff account receivable is exactly 30 days old. And the question is, well, does that belong in our less than 30-day column or the 30 to 60 day? Well, 30 days is not less than 30 days, so it can't be in that first column, which means that it's in the 30 to 60 day column. And let's take the one that's exactly 60 days. So exactly 60 days old, does that put it in the 30 to 60 days or the 60 to 90 days? Technically, when you see something with a dash in it like that, that means 30 to 60 days. And the word to means up to, not including the 60. And it's not always consistent in the real world, but that's technically what it means, which means that the 60 does not belong in this category because it's up to, not including 60. The 60 is included in the next category. So I'm going to put myself in the 60 to 90 day and grab the receivable amount. By the way, if you accidentally, instead of grabbing the receivable amount, get the number of days, because it's real easy to do that. We're focused on the days to get the correct column, and you're thinking about days, you might forget and pick up days instead of the amount. You will get red feedback in here. So it'll tell you if you've picked up the wrong amount there, or if you get it into the wrong column. So because you get red feedback for this section, I'm not going to complete this. I'm going to let you do that. So I'm not going to check off step number 3, but hopefully you have enough information to be able to complete that step on your own. I am going to move on to step number 4 to give you an idea of how to approach that step. So this one puts us on the totals row and asks us to enter a sum function for each of the age categories. And there's a hint to make sure that we include all of the cells in the age category, and I'll show you what that means. And we're also going to enter a sum function in K47 to add the totals across. So again, I'll walk you through all of those things. So I'm going down to the totals row. And the first thing we need is a sum function for this first age category, for the new ones, less than 30 days old. So I've selected the cell where I want to see the result of the sum function, and then I'll go to the Home tab on the ribbon, click on Auto Sum. Excel tries to figure out what I want to add, but it's guessing wrong. So I'm going to overwrite it, and I'm going to pick up this entire column, because even though some of the cells will have numbers when you finish spreading your receivables and others won't, if you pick up all of them, then if you use this file as a template for future periods, regardless of where the amounts fall within the column, you'll pick them all up. And it doesn't matter that you're picking up blank columns, that's not going to affect your total. So I'm picking up the entire column, I'll press enter. And yes, that's turning red because of course I don't have all my pieces, my spread pieces in here yet. But that's how you get the sum function in and include the entire column. So you'll do that for each of the 4 age categories. And then you're going to put a sum function over here in the check figure box as well. So this time you'll want to add the total of each age category across. So again, I'll go to the Home ribbon, go to Auto Sum, and this time Excel actually guesses right. It wants to add these 4 totals, and that's what I want it to do, so I'll simply press enter. Remember that what you're doing when you spread the amounts, the accounts receivable amounts, into these age categories, every single one of the account receivable amounts has to end up in one of these categories, which means that when you add the total of the 4 categories, your check figure should agree with your total accounts receivable. And if this number, the check figure, does not, it means that maybe you forgot to spread one of the pieces, and maybe you forgot to get it into an age category, or maybe you accidentally picked up a number of days instead of the dollar amount. But these 2 numbers, the 2 highlighted in yellow, the 2 values in those cells should be the same. Again, that's to make sure that you've got all of your accounts receivable amounts someplace in this aging schedule. So I can't check that step off, but again, hopefully you have enough information to be able to complete that on your own. The next step requires that we look at some history here. And what we know from the data that we're provided is that experience shows that the older the accounts receivable get, the less likely we are to collect them. And in fact, if the receivables are pretty new, we end up not collecting only 1%. So we collect 99% of our new accounts receivable. As they get a little bit older, they age from 30 to 60 days. Now the portion that we can't collect gets a little higher. 2% of those we won't collect. Boy, by the time those receivables are 90 days or more old, we end up not being able to collect 60% of those old ones. 60% of the old ones end up being bad. So what we want to do is echo these percents down into the row 49. It's called the estimated uncollectible percent line. So let's go down there. Here's our estimated uncollectible percent line. And for that first age category, for the 30 to less than 30 days category, we're going to write off or figure that 1% of those are going to be bad. So I'm going to echo in the 1% by typing the equal sign in and then grabbing that 1%. The estimated uncollectible percent for the second age category is 2%. So again, I'm going to echo. So I'm typing in my equal sign and I will echo in that 2%. And you'll do the same thing for the other two age categories. Again, I'm not going to check off number 5, but hopefully you're good with that one. And that brings us to step number 6. Enter a formula in G50 to calculate the estimated amount of uncollectible accounts receivable for the first age category. And then we're going to autofill that formula across through column J. So we'll go to G50. And this is where we're estimating the actual dollar amount of the bad accounts receivable. So we know that our total for our less than 30-day receivables, our new ones, we know that total isn't right. But we also know that whatever that total is, if I take 1% of it, that gives me the estimated bad ones in that bunch. So I can put the formula in. It's going to turn red, but that's okay. So I'm going to type in the equal sign and take the total of that first age group and multiply it by the bad percent, the 1%. And there's my estimated bad accounts receivable from that first age category. And then I would do the same thing to get the estimated bad accounts receivable for the second age category. And I can do that by hand. I can type in my equal sign, pick up the total for the second age category, and then multiply it by the bad percent for that category, which is the 2%. And because I have no total, it's showing me 0. But again, when you get your amounts spread, you'll get more reasonable looking numbers down here on our estimated bad receivable line. But I can also save myself some time and autofill this formula across. So think about this. Do we want to leave both of these cell references relative so that they both change as we copy across? And the answer is yes. We want G47 to change to H47, and we want G49 to change to H49, which is exactly what will happen if we just leave those alone and don't make them absolute. So I'm going to get the autofill cross and drag across to the right to my 4 age columns. And let's check this formula over here in our last column, and it's picking up the total for the over 90-day age category. It will pick up the bad percent for that category, multiply them to get the dollar amount of bad accounts receivable from that category. So that's how you autofill the formula across through column J. And then the final step is to enter a formula in K50 to calculate the total estimated bad accounts receivable, which is the whole point of preparing this aging, is to figure out how much of our total accounts receivable are going to be bad. So K50, By the time you've got all of your amounts spread, you'll have real numbers down here in your estimated bad accounts receivable line. So the formula that you're going to enter for the total in K50 will be the sum of all of the bad accounts receivable from each age category. So again, home ribbon, auto sum, and Excel is guessing right. In this case, it says, yep, I want to add these 4 pieces. That's good. I'll press enter. Yes, I have lots of red results because again, all the pieces are not complete in the aging, but that's how you find out of the total receivables of 175,200, what portion of those are actually estimated to be bad ones that we can't collect. So now you know how to use Excel to do math with dates, how to use autofill, how to use absolute and relative references, and how to prepare an accounts receivable aging.